What's a good word, everyone? It's your boy DKB here. I just want to say thanks for all the support. The channel's been steadily growing, and the number you see below, you can drop a text, shoot a voicemail, any ideas, topics, collabs, etc. you guys want to see. I'll include them in future videos and live streams, and I'll catch you again. Be easy. What's the good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here. And with day 10 of training camp officially in the books, it's insane to think about how fast and or slow this offseason has been under Aaron Glenn, where there's plenty of first time head coach, first time working with the new GM, first OTAs, first mandatory mini camp, first training camp, etc. So thinking that we're so close to seeing our first preseason game action under Aaron Glenn, we still have joint practices with the Giants to look forward to as well. It's been awesome to hear him switching up the program as we get prepared for live game reps, which means he's extending practice. Is normally begin at 8 a.m. and I believe now he's switching to more of a 12:45 p.m.-ish time, assuming that we're going to be playing a lot of 1 p.m. games, right? And he already advised that the practice rep count is going to increase to mimic what would be happening in a game day setting, right? Which is awesome for the depth guys that are looking to separate themselves, and for the pseudo competitions, if you will, at the starting level, which would be wide receiver 2, 3, 4. The center competition, for example, is going to help ideally solve those and answer those questions for the staff that much sooner. But with day 10, let's knock out some of the I was going to say home ec, but let's knock out some of the injury news on this front, right? Injuries are stacking up here, right? And this is the longest list I've seen at this point towards the offseason. But Tyrod Taylor has a knee. Mason Taylor has an ankle. Excuse me. Xavier Gipson has a shoulder. John Simpson with the back. Quinnen Williams with the calf, Chris Boyd with a shoulder, and Malachi Moore with an oblique all did not practice. Now, Malachi Moore is the only one on that list I would consider day-to-day, according to the updates that we had, and we'll probably see him coming up for this preseason game. But everyone else has already been ruled out for the week and or in addition to the game, right? So we'll see what happens there. Tyrod Taylor, probably the most impactful, right, just in terms of continuing to evaluate the roster with upper tier quarterback play. But that meant more snaps for Brady Cook and Adrian Martinez, and we'll comment on that here shortly. Then I did want to also talk about quickly special teams perspective. A perfect day from Mevis, aka the thicker kicker, who went 6-6 on the day, and then Nick Folk just slightly behind, going 5 of 6. But two factors here before we get into player specifics. One, this was another situation where the defense won the day, and from a Justin Fields perspective, 2 or 3 practices now where things have looked pretty bad on paper, but Robbie Sable has some interesting comments there that I think should open up some people's eyes into not taking too much stock into what we're hearing. Again, a grain of salt with anything that's overwhelmingly good or overwhelmingly bad. And then the emphasis on the run game, right? I think more so than any time that I can recall, the offensive line not only feels bought into it, it feels like they are kind of expecting that we'll be run heavy, and Aaron Glenn ever so slightly tampered that back a little bit, right? We're not running 50 times a game and only throwing the ball 10 times, but when able to and when necessary, we're going to make sure that we can run it down people's throats. And the offensive line, AVT, John Simpson, we've heard Joe Tippmann, everybody seems to be fully committed to what that's going to take, what it entails, the technique, right? Obviously the endurance and the physicality of the whole thing. But we've also seen it consistently over the course of training camp, where it's been a few days where you haven't heard highlights of guys breaking off chunk gains or just consistently making the plays that are there while also contributing in the air. So with that said, let's get into Justin Fields. Now, 3 of 15. I've seen 4 of 16 as the other number on the day for him, but overall not great, right? Now, Robbie Sable actually had some pretty good commentary here that I liked because it brought everything into context for those that are stat watching and some of the other creators and or just fans that I see commenting just based on what they're hearing. And you have, of course, the stats and what they say, right? Multiple days where he's been under, 50% completion percentage. And the only glowing thing to really talk about is one or two highlight throws and then mostly what he can do in terms of using his legs. But then you have Aaron Glenn walking out to the podium consistently, and he's saying, yes, there's some things that need to be worked on, but also some things that he's doing really, really well. And so those two things don't seem to match, right? And it could cause some panic, could cause some concern. We've heard Robert Saleh gloss over and kind of praise, Zach Wilson and everyone else that they tried to bring in and had to maneuver around, just ultimately fall flat in their face, right? And anytime you have a defensive guy commenting on the offensive side of things, I think many people just kind of treat it as water under the bridge or a guy that doesn't really know what he's talking about here. But I think, again, Aaron Glenn has a vision. He understands how he wants to execute it. He's coaching to that vision. And so things are relatively fine. But in terms of what Robbie Sable was mentioning, we know this is a timing-based offense that Engstrand is bringing over. And that's been highlighted on a number of different occasions. But one of the things that hasn't been factored in is that Aaron Glenn's talked about this already. Justin Fields is doing a pretty good job of when his initial read isn't there, he's throwing the ball away, right? And this comes with us trying to develop up his passing ability. Specifically, we know he's been prone to locking in on guys and things of that nature, but you love to see that he's trying to eliminate the negative plays when necessary. So if you are going to be a guy that's kind of locked in on whatever your primary read is supposed to be, if you can't hit it or you're not positive or confident that you're going to be able to make the most of that play, then it does help that you're at least not costing us anything, right? And you can win plenty of games just by essentially learning how not to lose in the NFL if you have a decent team around you. So with that, with the fact that also when we're talking practice, we know that Justin Fields isn't just going to be able to run all over the place. It doesn't make sense to allow him to do that. We already know what that means. But also, from a defensive standpoint, in practice anyways, the practice setting, it's not really going to be treated as the same kind of threat level, right? Because ultimately having a guy that's going to go untouched and having to make some of those decisions on whether he wants to throw it, whether he's going to try to pass it off on RPOs, whether he's taking the ball for himself, the defense knows, right? Why waste time having guys have to try to get him down and ultimately take away from trying to develop him again as a passer and or get a look at some of these other players and continuing to build that chemistry up. So extending plays is one thing. Having him break off and try to run and such doesn't necessarily do anybody any favors, but all of that factors in, right? Because if you are the secondary and such and you're looking to key in on stuff, you don't necessarily have to look to focus on the run as much. And so I'm sure once we get into the regular season, that switches up a little bit, right? We're still not going to be hitting Justin Fields, but there's going to be a level of having to practice actually facing the threat of a guy that can run and whip off these chunk games versus use his arm to attack some things deep. So it was just a bit of context that I really enjoyed reading from Robbie Sable, because even from myself at high level overview, when I'm taking in all this information, it seems like, yeah, Justin Fields is really having a rough go of it in the last week or so, but it seems like that couldn't be further from the truth while not being a, outright lie or, being a over talked about part of his game, right? But obviously some things that are going to continue to need to be stepped up, but it is what it is. For what it's worth, he did throw a touchdown to Stone Smart on the day. But also, since Tyrod Taylor was out and we got to get an extended look at Brady Cook and Adrian Martinez, Brady Cook had himself a pretty positive day. Touchdowns to Arian Smith and Isaiah Davis. Adrian Martinez did get a touchdown to Jamal Pritchett, but he struggled with being able to keep the ball, had 2 fumbles on the day. And one of the most talked about parts was Garrett Wilson's struggles today. Two pretty costly drops. One that I think was supposed to be a touchdown near the end zone, and the other one on a play that kind of like we heard otherwise, maybe just a bit late or a bit behind him, but a play that you expect your wide receiver one to be able to consistently make, right? So we've seen the freaky catches that he can make otherwise. Hopefully this is water under the bridge, but this could be more of the same if you're looking at Garrett Wilson and saying, well, yeah, he's never quite been a deep threat or still kind of struggles with the contested catches to a certain degree. And I don't know, blame it on still trying to figure out, getting that I wanted to say asynchronous, but that synchronicity with Justin Fields and making sure they're on the same page in all accords. The defense ruled the day, though, and that was Sauce Gardner locking up Garrett Wilson, multiple pass breakups, tight coverage, either erasing throws to his area or he was making sure that Fields can get the ball to Garrett Wilson one way or the other. And I'm hearing a bit of chatter out there about this potentially being the best camp that a lot of these reporters have seen from Sauce Gardner since entering the league, which is a lot considering walked out the gate with 2 All-Pro seasons, and even last year was still one of the best coverage cornerbacks, even though he struggled in some other areas of the game. So you love to see it, the tenacity, the continuous improvement, the continuous drive after getting the bag, which has not been something we've had a whole lot to look forward to. For the rest of these guys, Brandon Stevens was probably the next most successful person. Pass breakups versus Reynolds. Tyler Johnson still seeing coverage versus Garrett Wilson as well. He seems like he's been turning the corner lately where he's been able to make a lot more plays. His coverage is getting a little bit more stickier and tighter, and he seems like maybe he's finally, again, turning that corner and adapting to what this coaching staff is able to offer him, which for one is huge and should be a good confidence booster, not only for this staff, but for other players around the league on the outside looking in, because if the Ravens couldn't get it done with being able to salvage him or turn him into something, you would imagine mostly everybody else in the league will struggle as well. So this is at the very least a feather in the cap of Aaron Glenn and the staff that he was able to assemble on that side of the ball. Clemens got a sack. He's been having an outstanding camp according to Steve Wilkes and company. McDonald had a sack. Watts had a sack. Rashad Weaver, for those that remember him breaking out during OTAs and being a little bit quieter here, he had a sack. And so ultimately, I think it was just one of those days, right? You have Brady Cook, Adrian Martinez stepping up, guys that are in that third, fourth string conversation for a reason. No one that you would want to rely on to have to be your primary backup at this point. And so they're struggling with some of this timing-based attacks and stuff as well. Plus, give them a little bit of grace right there. Their wide receiver core isn't going to be as great as what Justin Fields is going to get a chance to work with at least having Garrett Wilson and Mason Taylor, for example. Granted, he was out today, but it seems like there's been improvements, there's been some strides, but overall the offense is still trying to figure out a way to consistently have answers against this defense, and that shouldn't be shocking in and of itself. But I don't think there's a ton to necessarily worry about when it comes to the Justin Fields-led offense. But I'm excited to see all these guys in preseason. Let me know what you guys think. Appreciate all the support as always. I'll catch you guys again. Peace.